welcome back to another exciting episode of Highlander Heart. And I'm even more excited because the three of us are back together again. Yay!
I have returned.
It's good to have you guys back again, all three of us, for another show. It's been going pretty well so far. What do you think?
Oh yeah, loads of fun.
And it's been great getting some really nice comments on YouTube as well, from people really enjoying the stuff. So far we've done, well, we kicked off with the reboot, and then we looked at the deleted scenes from Highlander. Then we've kind of cycled through Highlander 2, Highlander 3 with director Andy Morahan, and Highlander 4 with director Doug Arnikoski. This episode, I would do something a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that we've finished with the sequels yet. Oh no.
One more to go.
We've been very lucky so far to talk to the directors of Highlander 3 and Highlander 4. And let me just say, Highlander 5 is no exception. And I literally can't wait. I'm so excited.
I am on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, literally edge of it. And in fact, we're not just going to give you one episode, I think, of Highlander the Source. We're going to get 2, possibly 3. We'll see how that third one goes.
We need to dissect it carefully.
We do.
Logically.
Yes, with lots of sauce, as in the
HP.
Whiskey variety. Yeah, no, not HP sauce. But before we get there, this episode, I'm delighted to introduce somebody who's going to be talking to us about this incredible journey they've been on in looking into the background of Highlander. And the making of it with an incredible book, but I'll let him tell you about that. So without further ado, it's Jonathan Melville. Hi, John. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Grant?
Hi.
And Robert and Joe. How you doing?
It's fantastic to have you on. I've been meaning to do this for a long time, but I know it's been a while, sort of getting the book ready, and now we're finally there. It comes out this week. Very exciting. There it is.
Yes, very excited. I'm very excited. Yes. I put a little video online a week or so ago, and all I could do is say, I'm excited.
I've pre-ordered it, 2 copies.
2. They make me look bad now because I've only ordered one.
Well, I wanted one, and then I wanted a signed one.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Duh.
Thank you for that. Well, I appreciate it. Obviously, when anyone, I mean, it's great on social media. People have been saying they're buying copies, and it's just a really nice thing for anyone to spend money on something you've created. It's really, it really means a lot. So thank you.
Oh no, you're welcome. And to be fair, incredibly well deserved. I mean, I have to say right off the bat, this isn't. For anybody watching who aren't familiar with what Jonathan's been writing, it's you can see it behind him there, A Kind of Magic, The Making of Highlander. But this isn't just a book where he chatted to the director, the stars, and kind of, sort of wrote around that and kind of threw something. This is proper investigative journalism. Like the finite details that you've gone into in writing this book, I just jaw-dropping.
Well, no, I should say, first of all, I don't know what any of you actually think of it. I mean, I've sent, obviously, you a copy. Unfortunately, I only had the PDF when I sent it to you. I'm sorry about that. So it's actually a bit I'm slightly nervous because I don't know what you think. So far, this is going well. Rob's looking a bit quiet there, so I don't know what he's thinking. So
I've just got one of those faces.
That's true. But no, thanks. Yeah,
no, it is. It's stunning. I think the as I say, we'll get into a little bit more later. But just it literally is a book that takes you from the very beginning all the way to the end and beyond. And you have not spared no expense, but you have not stopped at investigating every aspect. It's one of those things where you look at it and you must have gone, right, well, okay, so this company were to, right, right, well, let's look into this company and speak of the fact, right, and then this whole story. I mean, some of the details about, like, just some of the things, they go off on tangents, but it is all relevant and it is all massively interesting. It just, just not even just from the perspective of a Highlander fan, but from a perspective of anybody interested in filmmaking. And film distribution, and certainly how it was done then. Obviously, things may have changed slightly now, but yeah, it's a fantastic book.
Phew. I'm very glad you said that. Yes, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this. I don't know how long we have, but yes, tangents. I did write a book on the Tremors movies a few years ago, and I think one of the reviews said something like it does go off in some tangents, and so that's something I'm a bit guilty of. But if something's interesting, you sort of think, well, maybe I could spend a few pages. If someone's come for this, maybe they'll indulge me for another few pages. So
yeah, no, absolutely, and it all feeds back and it all relates. Understanding why some of the companies kind of went bust, or things changed massively going into before they were distributing, and it just all of these little stories, and how money was spent by one guy flying to New York on Concorde for a haircut, like stuff like that is just mind-blowing, but also just a really nice insight into the behind the scenes of what was going on. But yeah, like, I feel like I'm spoiling it all now, but I've got so many things that I love about this. But so I mean, I'll leave it to some of the other guys to ask you some questions, because I'm monopolizing it all. So, Rob, did you have anything that that you wanted to say to Jonathan, like how much you love it and stuff?
That was all right, It had words, It was,
words and pictures.
It was words in a page. I didn't see any of the pictures. That's what I'm very much looking forward to the finished product and seeing all these lovely pictures, because I like picture books. But no, I mean, what Grant was saying about the details, there's something that caught my, it was in chapter 4, something like that, and they were talking about a storyboard artist that was hired didn't know what to charge. So he stuck 50 quid on what he thinks is a normal rate, and it turns out it was still half of what you normally get.
Yeah.
And they were laughing. I'm sure we can, arrange something to do better than that and whatnot. And the tiniest little details that make this worth reading, because we've seen the film, we've watched DVDs, documentaries, behind the scenes, all of that stuff, but none of that deals with what's in the book. What's in this book in particular, the tiny little details, and they're just like new stuff, new information. After 35 years, we're getting new information, stuff we've never heard of.
Brilliant.
As fans, I'm thinking, am I really a fan? I didn't know any of this. It's like, that's interesting. That's it. And it, like Grant says, it goes in a tangent then, but it feeds back, and you get a sort of payoff and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I just love the details and stuff like that. So I've not finished it yet, but I'm looking forward to getting the printed copy just so I can sit and read and flick through the pictures. So
well, no spoilers then. No spoilers here about what happens at the end of whether the film comes out or not. We won't tell you that.
Well, that's it. I don't know yet. I mean, I don't actually know.
Well, just to say what you're saying there is when I started the book, exactly what you're saying is what I said to myself. I thought, if I can't tell fans, real fans, lifelong fans, if I can't give them new information, there's not any point in doing this, really. I mean, of course, I could have done something maybe for new fans, I suppose, who but if you Google this and you look at Empire magazine or old Star Logs, a lot of these stories, a lot of the story of Highlander is out there already, and of course, know it. And Grant, of course, has written about it and blogged about it and videoed about it. And so you're in a way, you're sort of the target audience, I think, because what's the point in just repeating all the stuff you've read before? So no, I think Joe Hader, I think you may be referring to there, who
I can't remember the guy's name.
Artist. I mean, I just saw his. I'm sure you'll ask, or you might ask for this later, but that was me going on to IMDb and just scrolling down and trying to see who's, and emailing people if I could, and if they didn't exist, you know, if they weren't on there, then or their email addresses weren't there, of course I didn't email them, but I emailed just everybody I could, and Joe was one of the ones that emailed back, and his name isn't in the titles, the end titles, so he was kind of a bit surprised, I think, that somebody was getting in touch. But he makes it. He's one of the guys that makes it, and I'm sure we'll talk about Campbell Muirhead at some point, who is another star, I think, of this book. Christopher Lambert is a star, but I think the likes of Campbell Muirhead is another star, unsung.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So thank you again. That's great. Exactly what I wanted to hear, really. If I'd written this down beforehand, what you're saying is what I wanted to hear. So it means that all these hours, Grant, you mentioned looking at businesses. I mean, that was boring, really. Yeah. Looking at Thorn EMI and trying to work out when they funded Highlander, and you know what other things they were working on at that time, and what the budget situation was like, and all that stuff was really quite dull. So I hoped that as I was writing it, I thought this is very boring, and I was trying to make it sound a bit more interesting. So,
but yeah, it doesn't read. It does not read boring at all. It reads like it's part of the story. You're telling a story all the way through, and it just reads as part of this story, and it's all sort of you're sort of unraveling this kind of this sort of behind the scenes stuff. And yeah, it like I said, you've got a nice writing style. It's not just a case of like, you know, this happened, blah blah blah, this amount of money, blah 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 blah. You know, it's all just kind of, it pulls you in, and you're invested at this point because you want to. We all know what happened. We all know that it sort of failed at the box office in America, but nobody really knew why. Unless they'd looked into it, and nobody really understood all of the reasons behind the scenes and all of the decisions that producers might have made, and you know, conversations that they'd had with other people, and you know, relationships that kind of just went by the wayside because they said, yeah, but they'll publicize it. They're not gonna, you know, of course they'll publicize, you know, just, okay. Yeah, mistakes were made, as they say. Perhaps. Yeah, no. How about you, Joe? What did you think?
I think it's a fantastic book. I kind of treat books like this as kind of a choose your own adventure. I'll jump around to chapters. I'm like, you know, I want to know how that part was done or how that progressed, and that usually leads me to go, oh, I need to go back a few and things like that. So you know, even though, as Grant pointed out, it has a nice narrative flow, it was easy to jump around. One of the things that struck me and immediately pulled me in was reading your introduction, and you talking about having seen Highlander with a double bill with The Crow, and having worked on The Crow on the film and been on set. That kind of struck me and immediately pulled me into a kind of a kinship with the author, with you. And you know, I never really kind of thought about those two films being a good double feature, but it kind of works, and I'm actually now going to watch them in that order. But yeah, no, it's great. And as Grant said, you kind of are very exhaustive in the details of the making of. I think a lot of people don't understand that when you make a film, you know, it's not like, you know, we started making the movie in January, and you know, at the end of February it comes out. Here you go. Here's a completed movie. There's a long journey. You know, especially kind of in the Highlander universe, all of the films have had interference and changes made at various points. So getting to get into the details of that and seeing it wasn't just like on a whim where some executive said, you know, change this and change it now and things like that. So getting into some of the thinking behind the changes, how it went from, you know, the original story set in, you know, present day Washington, D.C., and some of the, I won't spoil it too much, but some of the character differences, yet, you know, the framework was there from the first draft. forward. So getting to see that and how everything progressed was just fantastic. And like Rob said, I mean, me, Grant, and Rob have been fans of this since the movie came out in '86, and I thought I knew everything about it. I've pored over all kinds of articles, some of them written by Grant, all kinds of behind the scenes stuff, and there was a lot in here that I had no idea, and it was beautiful reading that. And it's just, to me, it's just amazing that after this long, there's still things to be discovered. So thank you for uncovering those things and presenting them to us. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
There you go. That's means,
yeah, it just means a lot, because again, as I say, it took 4 years from start to finish, and it's not the sort of thing you can just do of an evening. I'll just go and write some stuff. There's a lot of very boring stuff, as I keep saying, a lot of fun stuff as well, but there's some boring stuff. But anyway, so no, that's again lovely, so thank you.
No, and some of the stuff that I really liked, I think, were the creative choices that were kind of imagined, then reimagined, then changed, and things like that. I was kind of very interested to read about the basically the kind of what I kind of term in my head as the kind of the Care Bear logic behind the quickenings, where some of them were green, some of them were orange, some of them were purple, and then at the end, Connor kind of as he's sort of rising and getting the quickening is sort of this sort of rainbow kind of color of thing kind of going around him, and that was an interesting concept that obviously they didn't carry on with, but it spoke of all of the different people involved in all the different immortals being involved in that final quickening, that final prize, in a way of visually showing how each of those were sort of incorporated into that final thing, and other ways as well that they went through all that. I get as a creative, you feel for those people who worked as a special effects on the end of the movie, who is basically calling in all of these favors and all these people who you do. If somebody comes to you with a project, with a really creative project, and you want to work on it, and but for me, like with it's like a movie poster or something, or a titling, like movie titles or whatever, and it's like, sure, I'll work on it. We haven't got very much money. Okay, fine, that's fine, because it's cool, it's creative, and you put all this work in, and all this work went into sort of this, from the potential creature, which there is a tinsy little bit more of that in some of the unused scenes, which we covered a little bit in the deleted scenes, where the Kurgan obviously he's had the head chopped off. There's some slight variations in that didn't appear in the movie that I can see that they're speaking about. But through this creature that was going to come out, and he was going to battle the creature, that they decided not to go with that, and all the stuff that the effects people did with all of the different immortals, and they film themselves with a wind machine, and I think with the cotton wool, and just all of this stuff, and all of these things, and then so much of it didn't get used, but I find that kind of stuff fascinating, because as much as I love all of the narrative differences and changes that they made throughout, and decided different directions they went to go in, that's the kind of stuff that would potentially have completely changed the feel of the film. I think if all of a sudden at the end he's had to battle this monster, this sort of, and nobody, and what I love as well, they completely honest, it's like nobody really understood what we were doing. It didn't make sense.
Well, that's it. Yeah, one of the guys I think just says, "Yeah, I didn't." He says, "I just thought it was all nonsense. I didn't have a clue what was going on."
Yeah,
there's actually a bit of a theme of that to the film, I think, to the book of people just not really quite knowing what they've got and what to do with it. Tony Mitchell, I think it is, in New York, who's the cinematographer in New York, who I think is another fantastic character. He talks about how he didn't speak to Jerry Fisher. And nobody actually spoke to him. Nobody told him what to do. the producers didn't like him. Russell didn't really speak to him, and he just sort of turned up on the day, and he was all these like trucks in New York and all the people he had to work with, and he was just promoting people left, right, and centre. And he says, the guy nearly had a heart attack because he'd never done this job. And I said, you're going to do this job, and it's like just crazy stuff going on, And I wanted, I don't know if I would like to have done a bit more, I think, to try and maybe set the scene of New York in the 80s. I tried a little bit of that at the start of the sort of first New York chapter, but I think it just would have been, looking back on that, must have been amazing. Or, from our perspective anyway, it's, from where we are in 2020, looking back at 1985 in New York, I would love to have walked through that city, even though it was probably a bit scary at times, but
yeah, probably.
But getting some of those characters was really important, and again, I just wanted to try and bring to life every location, rather than just say, and then they went to Scotland and they filmed for 2 weeks and then they went home.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I love the Scottish stuff, and I love all the stuff around Ellen Donner. And how that sort of effectively suddenly became Hollywood, and because it'd been, I mean, maybe not so much prior to that, but it's been used in plenty of movies since. But it must have been a real kind of shock to the system for all these people that all of a sudden sort of Hollywood descends on this small, sort of village of Dorney, and it's just, they're throwing money at everything. Trying to get, and I love the idea that they looked at it and they went, oh, there's houses over there, and they would drive over there and they would get scaffolding up and camouflage them for long shots, and it's just, all the stuff like that's fantastic. And I mean, this thing made me laugh only because, so my wife can never understand or accept why, as an actor, you get lunch. Like she's like, everyone should just take their own lunch. Every other job, you have to take your own lunch. How come you get lunch? It's just like, well, it's just the way it is. And she's never understood that. So I love the story about, during that big fight sequence, shown at the very beginning of the movie, in Scotland, with all of the extras and things like that, it literally nearly fell apart because they didn't get any food.
Yeah, that's a story that I found incredible, really. And with a lot of the stories, some of the stories that are a bit more, so some people I spoke to, I don't want to name names, but they didn't want the book to be negative. And I didn't want the book to be negative. It was never meant to be a hatchet job and say, right, this is all the scandalous things that happen behind the scenes. Because again, I got one comment, only one, but it stuck with me, on an Amazon review from someone who said that the Tremors book was like low, not much, everybody seemed to like each other and they got on. Right. So that's not very exciting. And the fact is, that's all that people told me. So it's not like I was trying to cover things up.
Yeah.
With this book, some people told me things that weren't entirely positive. And I thought, well, I'll try and say it in a way that's not just again, negative about any one person, if I can avoid that. And so in some cases I was trying to get different people to corroborate, I suppose, that point of view. Yeah. So this thing about the battle sequence is kind of negative a bit towards the producers. And again, that wasn't in intention, but the fact that a few people did back it up and say, yeah, that happened, it just made me feel a little bit better in a way, because I thought, well, this is something that affected people who were there. It could have caused huge problems with the film, and at the time, it's something you just don't want to cover up and pretend didn't happen. So I hope 35 years down the line, when Mr. Davis reads the book, if he reads the book, maybe he won't. I hope, because it is at the back of your mind. Although again, you sort of said about investigative journalism. I'm not a hardened journo, and I do sometimes worry about people's feelings, and you don't want to offend people. So, yeah, I think personally, yes, I think that's an important story to tell, and it just adds, and I think it's also just reflects and comments on the politics of the day, which of course was a Margaret Thatcher government, and it's interesting that that even came onto the battlefield in Scotland on a Hollywood, but certainly a British film with American. Well, it was all British money actually, which is something that surprised me when I started writing this. But yeah, the fact that politics came onto it and they were burning effigies of, I think it was Margaret Thatcher on the. I mean, you don't see that in the DVD extras, do you?
No.
Well, you're filming in Scotland. It's a bit hard not to.
Yeah. But so yeah, and so yeah. I mean, I don't want to jump around too much, but just that idea of corroborating stories. There is a story that Jim Aitchison, the costume designer, tells about Clancy, and he, they had a bit of an argument, and I wanted both of them to comment on that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
yeah. Well, then that's fair, isn't it? Then you've got both sides of the story, and then you can kind of deliver that. Yeah, exactly. Because it's very easy for you to have to be looking at very one-sided. Because obviously everybody comes at something like that with their own perspective and their own sort of issues, perhaps, and maybe they look back on it, like badly. And it's nice that you kind of took the effort to go and get both sides of the story. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
I really like too that you had moments where you kind of dispelled some stories and legends surrounding the movie that have existed for years. Chief among them being that Sean Connery recorded his intro in a bathroom, and that's why it was all echoey. And it turns out that wasn't true at all. And that's just been accepted by fans as being true for forever. So it's kind of fun seeing those things, either confirmed or denied, and what the actual story was. And it turns out it was a little bit more boring than, the only space he had was his bathroom. So that was kind of fun reading those things too.
Yeah, and I'm still amazed that I got to speak to Peter Bellwood and Larry Ferguson about writing that script, because I think that was another thing. I was just came out with. I mean, I had to track them down. It was a bit of detective work to find those guys, but they were very keen to talk at the same time and tell the truth. And that's what I say in the book. That I think it was maybe Larry that emailed and said, I want to put the record straight, because so many times other people tell the story and they weren't there, or it's a different version of it. So that was really, really important.
No, absolutely. And it really also, one of the other things it gets across is that they really gave the script a heart. Ultimately, I think Wynn's original kind of treatment, it was a proper script, but it almost kind of, if you look at it like that, was very dark in tone, was had all of the elements that we kind of have grown to love, but they really kind of those guys really kind of gave it that heart with the the humor and the romance and just the lighter tones amongst all of the kind of the angst and the beheadings and things like that. Yeah. It's great that they got to voice that. Although I feel so bad for them about the when they basically shot themselves in the foot with the WGA and basically lost out on credit going forward.
Yes, yeah, that's
yeah.
What do you say about that? Yeah, that's something you regret, I think.
So I'm interested to know, obviously, in the 4 years that you've been writing this, what this is probably a tough one. I'm sure you've been asked already. What was your maybe most question? What was your most interesting thing that you found out for you? Who was the most interesting person you spoke to? Well, let's start with those.
Yeah, that is a tricky one. What was the most interesting? Because I have been I knew people would ask me that, the thing is, Joe mentioned earlier, there's a lot to take in. There are a lot of different facts, and I think so many things were interesting that I'd never heard before. At the most basic level, the thing that was really interesting as someone who's not, again, spent I've been a fan for years, but not a super fan. So the fact that it was a British film, that surprised me at the start. And I thought, for some reason, I just thought it was an American funded film, and but it wasn't. So it was a British film. So that was a surprise. What else surprised me? I think learning more about the David Yip story. I think that was an interesting thing. So the sequence that was cut, which people talk about all the time on Highlander Heart, I think it's been mentioned a few times, and that video that's shared of Clancy fighting in the Wall Street building, which nobody really knows really quite what was going on with that and why it's not in the film. And I will admit I still probably haven't quite solved it, but I hope I've moved things along slightly.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a surprise. It was interesting. That was an interesting thing. But it's difficult to sort of say there's one thing, because I just kept hearing, stories from people that I was just like, oh, really? Who knew that? It was just constant, really. And that is one thing I'm slightly, maybe not nervous about, but I wonder, is there too much? I think I always almost wonder, do you need to read the book a couple of times to get the most out of it? Because I think you possibly miss things. Because I do cram quite a lot of facts in there. So Joe's nodding there. So maybe.
Yes.
Well, it's like studying for a test. You're going to miss a few things.
Right.
Yeah. So,
like you said, it's definitely fully detailed. So yeah, I would agree that. I mean, for me personally, it's going to be something that I will go back to every once in a while, especially when I watch the movie again, because I watch it fairly frequently as a rightful fan. No, there will be times, I'm sure, when I'm watching it that I'm like, it will spark questions, and thankfully to you, I now have a comprehensive reference to go back to and say, oh, why did that happen again, or how did we get to that? So yeah, I would say multiple times it will be read.
Great, yeah, brilliant, thank you. And I do think that kind of that Young Dog Kim section was kind of the most interesting in a way, because I spoke to Andy Armstrong who directed some of that, and John, now his surname I'm probably going to butcher it, Shunrad. I don't think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry, John, if you're watching. But he kind of did the mold design and worked with Catherine Mary Stewart, who was originally cast as Heather, and also David Yip, who, David Yip's representative sort of says he didn't. Well, she said I can't remember what she said now. I think it was David Yip didn't work on the film, wasn't in the film.
Yeah.
He didn't say he wasn't there.
No. Yeah.
But the guy who was actually called the Chinese detective by his friends says yes, he was, because people said, So no, that's an interesting thing for me. As for the was it who's the most interesting person? I think you said. Or,
yeah.
Well, I mean, Clancy, I think, was an amazing. Like, if I hadn't got Clancy Brown, I don't know. I think I would have continued with it, but it's hard to know if I would have had the same enthusiasm for it. I think, because he's such a guy. Again, as a sort of a fan, I knew that he didn't speak about Highlander very much. So I knew that to get him was always going to be difficult. And then he ended up coming to Edinburgh, where I live. And I met him for a few times. And so I just couldn't quite believe that had happened. And I still kind of don't believe it. Because I know people tweet me, some guys who are writing certain books and want an interview and say, I just can't get an interview with Clancy Brown. And I'm like, well, I can't help you, because I was invited to come meet him because he came to the film festival. So Clancy was brilliant, and also Campbell Muirhead, who I mentioned earlier, who's a fascinating character. He was Christopher Lambert's stand-in, and to find out about Campbell and hear all the stories about being in Fort William and getting taxis, be able to phone up taxis and say, "Hey, it's me, it's Campbell, come and collect me," and then people would come and get him. And this guy who had a few weeks earlier been, I think he'd been on the dole actually, in down near Glasgow, and suddenly he was working on this big movie. So he was a real fascinating character, and not anyone that, well, most people I'm sure haven't heard of Campbell Muirhead. So
no, absolutely. But yeah, no, I loved his stories, particularly the one where he's lying on the floor with BTN. Just the way he described that just made me chuckle. It's just like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and just like he was in the boat with Sean, and
just like
argued with Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, no offense to Campbell, but I think he's a man that can tell a story, and he's been in a lot of sets since then.
Right.
And sometimes you do wonder how many stories have sort of grown over the years, over the decades, and become something slightly different. So, but even if they have slightly grown, that's fine, because they're good fun, and he can tell a good story.
Yeah.
But he kind of just takes the book and takes the reader, I think, into areas that you wouldn't normally get to, and I think he's fascinating.
No, absolutely. Another story that just reminded me that I loved was the Sean Connery golf ball moment. Because I think had it been not that I can imagine another sport that would have been played out there that he might have got hit by a ball with, but had it been anything other than golf, I mean, you can imagine he would have just been gone, you know. I mean, I'm not sure if that took place before or after he got hit by something, when Clancy came down on the table with the sword.
After.
Okay. But you kind of feel like that he wasn't one to kind of suffer fools gladly. But the minute he realised what was going on, and again, I'm trying so hard not to spoil it because I want people to go and read the proper story. But that could have gone so wrong. So many levels. And also the other thing which I think is great is that you didn't stop at the first movie. We've gone all the way through from the very beginning, all the way from Gregory Wooden's original inspiration for the film and for the story and things like that, all the way through the publicity and the release, and then the DVD release and all of that, and then into Highlander 2, which I wasn't really expecting. And it's not a huge amount that you go into it, because it's sort of part of this whole what happened next bit. But it's really interesting stuff about, and especially because not only are you sort of following up on the stories of sort of what happened from the perspective that we possibly have already seen, but you're also getting the perspective of Clancy for one. And the fact that they came to him with the film, and his response to that, which was fantastic.
Did you know about that before?
I think I knew that maybe they had approached him. I think it probably went as read that they would have approached him. That would have made sense. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't have, given that they were trying to get the gang back together. And I do have a theory that the character possibly is still in the film.
Well, I've seen your photo screen grab.
Yeah, that moment, I'll probably I'll stick it on now and post. But yeah, that moment, it just that everybody else is wearing a hat, apart from this one guy with long black hair who's just looking mean and moody. I think maybe that was their attempt at kind of incorporating the Kurgan in there. But so I think it made sense that they would have approached him, but I don't think anybody has ever known for sure until now. And certainly his response to it, why he had that response to it.
He's great, isn't he? He's very honest.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's one of the great things. If you had written this book even 10 years ago, I don't think you would have necessarily had as much involvement from some of the people that you've had in there then. Because I think sometimes time is a good healer, and I think Clancy is a great example of that, where a certain amount of time has gone past, and for whatever reason, he's at the point now with, his age, career, whatever, where he's just like, bygones, just like, it's fine. It was a thing that I did and I enjoyed it, and it was a springboard and all of that. And, this happens, that happened, whatever. But yeah, I'll talk about it. I'll do the Goldbergs and that amazing, amazing sequence in that, which again, you went into in the book. Like, amazing. I could be disappointed that you didn't speak to the creator of Gumball about the Gumball the Gumball scene from the cartoon. But anyway, I tried to get in contact with him about that, and to no avail. Maybe one day we'll have him on. But no, it's it was great that we got to find out a little bit more about the nitty gritty of the sequel, and everybody's, and again, I'm trying not to spoil things, but everybody's feeling towards that film, not even just after it was made, but really during and because contracts and things, which is again just a little bit heartbreaking in a way, that all of that happened. But
I mean, Christopher has been very vocal, I think, for many, since that film came out, about his feelings about it, hasn't he?
Yeah.
That was interesting. But I mean, the chap that I spoke to, who incredibly worked on virtually all of the sequels and the TV series, Guy Collins, who I actually stumbled across his name because I read an article in, I think it was Screen International, from 1990 something, and it mentioned his name and Michael Ryan, who also worked on the funding for the first film, and it mentioned that they both worked on the first film. So I managed to get in touch with him, and when I first spoke to him, I said, "So, can you tell me about the first film?" He said, "I didn't have anything to do with that film." He came along after, so then he started talking about the sequels, and I was like, "Oh, this is brilliant."
Yeah,
and he goes into some detail, which, I mean, again, some of this stuff, I've not read lots and lots about the sequels. I mean, we should mention, it'd be nice to mention John Mosby's book. And
yes,
John,
of course.
John is the sort of patron saint of research into Highlander. And in his book, which has got the name Fearful Symmetry, which of course I referred to in the book, or I read when I was, I read it many years ago. In fact, John's book, as a sidebar, when that book came out, I had already started thinking about doing my Highlander book, and I almost scrapped it. I almost thought, oh well, someone's done it, because I wrote this book because I wanted to read it. I'll be honest, it was very selfish. I mean, it's very nice that other people now want to buy it. That's great, but really, I bought it just so I could have a copy, and I was quite happy. Because I thought, well, I want to know about the first film, really. Then John brought his book out. I bought my signed copy from him, and I read that, and I realised that he has gone into so much detail on all the sequels. And the first film, I'm guessing he loves that film, but he doesn't dedicate as much to that film as the other films. And so when I saw that, I thought, oh, well, maybe there's an opportunity, even though he has some great interviews, some that I couldn't get. So yeah, talking about the sequels then, really, I had read a bit about the sequels, of course, in John's book, but I think there's some stuff even that I maybe got that even John didn't have. So that's quite nice as well. Sorry, John, but it's, it is nice. And I reference his book slightly. I did actually ask him kind of permission and said, can I pinch some books? I think in the end I borrowed one quote. I think it was maybe Brian Bysouth who designed the poster, because I couldn't get Brian. But anyway, yes. So the sequels, I did actually find that a really interesting chapter to write about, or to write. And again, it's just that fact. Okay, there were quite a few references. Starlog was referenced quite a lot, and of course, Mr. Panzer couldn't. Of course, he sadly passed away, and I wish I'd got a chance to speak to him, because he was, from what it sounds like, the kind of creative force, certainly at many points through the history. And it is interesting that the guys who wrote the first film, who took it from Gregory, are a little bit. I think it's interesting that their view of Bill Panzer is he didn't quite understand what he had. And I think watching Highlander 2 the other night, without going into again too many this is me going off on tangents again. Watching that the other night, I sort of saw that, and I thought, I don't know if they did quite know what they had with the original Highlander. So almost like up to a point, and this is a big discussion, you could have another podcast, another video about this. Yeah. Did they just sort of maybe not understand what the concept was even right at the start? And it kind of went off in all these weird directions. So anyway, that's another discussion. But
no, absolutely. And again, another kind of interesting aspect is that the writers of the first film pleaded with him to not have it wrapped up at the end. To not become mortal and die, because what are you going to do about the sequel? And Bill Panzer's like, there's not going to be a sequel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Little did he know.
With what you were just saying, that kind of brings up the question, look back if you can and remember, 4 years ago when you started this, the concept and the idea of the book that you had in your head and what you wanted it to be versus the book you took out of the box a few weeks ago. How did that measure up? And did you achieve what you set it out to, or did it even go beyond what you originally thought?
Well, when I first started it, I did write. Originally, I didn't know if anyone was going to publish it. I thought I might do it myself. But I did write myself a kind of an outline of what I thought it would look like. So somewhere I do have that broken down into various chapters. And of course, we had Scotland and New York. So I suppose, yes, in one way it does resemble basically what I had, that kind of structure. But at that point, I didn't really understand the timeline of Highlander and how it was created. And there were quite a few emails back and forth to people like Tim Hutchinson, who worked with Alan Cameron on the film, and he kind of really helped me. His diary, in fact, is kind of a lot of the structure of the book is based on his diaries and dates that he had for. So when I say, they went to Ballachulish in Scotland on this date, and they went to Elandon, and that's all from his diaries. So having in detail like that, but kind of, took it in some slightly different directions, I suppose, that I wasn't expecting. And I didn't know if I was going to get Queen, either Brian May or Roger Taylor. I tried for 4 years, and I only got them because there's a pandemic. And so for a long time, things like that were kind of up in the air. And I spoke to a tribute band called Mercury. Joseph Lee Jackson is the lead singer. I don't know if anyone's been to see them, but they're brilliant. And I actually thought for a long time that's the closest I'll get to Queen. So I thought, why not speak to a band who perform in front of fans of Queen and also Highlander, and just hear what it's like.
Yeah.
And then I got Queen. So
so
there's a few things, of course, that getting Roxanne and Russell and people like that just kind of, I suppose, added layers to it that I wasn't expecting. So maybe it would have been a bit more, if I hadn't got all those people, it would have just been a bit more of a, this happened and this happened and this happened, rather than slightly timey-wimey, sneaking about, slight tangent, come back again.
Actually, talking about Roxanne, I've not read these parts in the book yet. I'm looking forward to it. But I was at the same convention you were when Roxanne and Beattie went.
Yeah, in Birmingham.
And I was disgusted to find that they never had a panel.
Yeah.
At the convention. They turned up, signed some autographs and stuff, and Roxanne was like, I've never done these, it's exciting, I've never done these things before, nobody's asked. And, you only get a small amount of time to talk to a guest and sort of move on, so you're not hogging time and whatnot. And I was always disappointed we never got a panel to ask questions what it was like for them in the movie.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that unfold in the book, because we've never heard anything from most of the women that were in Highlander, especially in the first film. But like I say, it's all new stuff, and I'm very excited about new stuff.
Yeah.
It's always a great feeling when someone emails you back and says, "Yeah, I'll speak to you."
Yeah.
Roxanne was difficult to get. Well, kind of difficult as well, but I got her in the end, and she was lovely.
Yeah. No, I completely understand where you're coming from our perspective in doing this. The highs I go through. I mean, some of the people we've had on so far, but to be fair, most of the people we've had on so far are people I've known for years anyway. But there are people coming up in more other episodes, in particular, one of the upcoming ones for the Source, that I didn't think that we would get. And that moment where they go, "Yeah, sure," is like, you know.
Yeah.
Amazing, you know, and so yeah, some of the people we've got kind of in the background, you know, waiting to do more episodes is very exciting when they give you that yes. So I can totally understand that. Yeah,
and I don't know if you had the same issue as me. Sometimes it just takes a long time. I mean, to get Russell took, I don't know, a year or two to get Russell. Partly because when I spoke to him, I did speak to him on the phone. He was in a taxi going to the airport, I think in Africa, South Africa. Wow. And he said, yeah, we'll speak again. And then it took another year and a half. And Christopher, I think I mentioned in the book, I can't remember how much detail I go into, possibly not too much actually, but I was meant to speak to him the week after the Edinburgh screening.
Yes.
So I was told that night, oh, by the way, we're going to hold one next week in London, and Christopher's going to be there if you can make it down. And I went down and we had the screening, and myself and Clancy and his family, and we all went off to this little hotel to sit in the bar. And then they said, oh, Christopher, there's an illness in his family and he can't speak to you. And my flight was due to go back up before, I think it was 6 o'clock, and he could maybe speak to me at 8 o'clock. And so I remember sitting in this hotel bar with Clancy, just sort of looking at each other going, oh, what to do now? And then I had to go home. So it took another year, I think, a year and a half to get to speak to Christopher. So yeah, a lot of that, which is why these things take 4 years. You know, I think I'm speaking to 60 people, but I think, you know, if you're going to do it, just do it. Right? What's the rush? You know, if you're going to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some people are worth waiting for. And as you mentioned, Queen, the minute that I heard that you had them, I was just, you know, I was so pleased for you, and for me as well, because they're, as Rob's talking, you know, saying about, you know, the women of Highlander, they're people that I don't think we've heard from in terms of Highlander, as far as I can recall. Not just necessarily their process of when they, which is all fascinating, of how they came up with, you know, each of them came up with the different songs and things like that, but actually just what they thought about it. And what they thought about the soundtrack album, and so excited that they want to now, they would be fully behind powers that be, wherever you are, whatever powers there are, they are fully behind putting together a soundtrack, Highlander soundtrack album, incorporating Michael Kamen's music.
I interrupt a little bit here.
Yes.
You know, the Studio Canal has the rights to release the film. Studio Canal has been doing recently, adding, like, I bought the Flash Gordon box set that has the soundtrack in it. The next one they've got is Total Recall, and they've got the 2 discs of the soundtrack for that in the set. 35th anniversary is coming up next year. A box set release could be in the future.
Fingers crossed. And it's the 50th anniversary of Queen next year as well.
Oh, wow.
Well,
good timing.
So if they're listening and watching, we'd buy it. Because that's what they want to hear. We'll buy it.
Yeah, you'd sell 4 copies for sure. Like
definitely. Right here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just me.
Fair enough. Okay, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 copies.
Yeah, I go into that a little bit again in the book, and there is, you'll read it in there, but I think we don't know. Nobody quite knows. I think the original master tapes are the sort of slight issue.
Yeah.
But I think if people start putting money and time and money into it, then things can be found. They dig deep enough. But it's whether they see value, I guess, and whether they can afford to pay somebody, I suppose, to spend hours and days and weeks looking for this stuff. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Of course, we all are, I guess, but now more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I bought a few biographies of the band to kind of do some research, and I didn't find a lot of the time. It's just a line or two saying, and the music was in Highlander.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's not really much, is it? So
yeah, and I understand now their perspective of why A Kind of Magic came out instead of a Highlander soundtrack album. It makes total sense for them.
Yeah.
But it was very much needing to kind of understand why, it makes sense. But it's always odd, I found, that they don't, it isn't talked about. It's such a big deal. Like, my wife loves Queen, and she's going to see them next year, which drives me nuts because she didn't ask me. And she just loves Queen, and whenever I have to keep telling it, but this basically the whole album is Highlander. No, it's not. Yeah, no, it is, because it's just not that well known that all of this is for that. And as you say, to have read the autobiographies and for literally be reduced to a sentence, but it's such a big deal.
Yeah, and I wonder who knows now, I did get them, but if I hadn't, I do wonder if that would have just been a bit of a chapter that you would just read and go, oh, well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows? But I think it definitely needed them, and I'm so happy. I mean, I'm sad that we had to go through a pandemic to get them, but...
Yeah. But no, phenomenal. It was the icing on the cake, as they say.
Yeah.
And I guess the cherry on top of the icing on the cake is your afterword, who you've had from someone special. Now, I don't know whether you've said who that is yet, and I don't want to spoil who it is.
I haven't, and I don't know. I mean, it was never meant to be a huge secret, but it's kind of a nice ending, and maybe we shouldn't mention it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think let people read it.
Yeah. I mean, that's nasty, but that was a last minute. I mean, that was a last minute, absolutely last minute thing. Like night before it. Final proof had to go to the printer. I think it was that came through.
Yeah.
Incredible. I'll show you a closer look at this cover. Isn't that a gorgeous cover?
It is beautiful.
I can say that I didn't design it, of course. So.
Oh well, yeah, but and I love the back as well. Flip it.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy the saltire.
And there is a little Easter egg which I'll share with you, which is down the bottom there.
Ah, look, there they are.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I had to try and get.
There we go.
Hugh Corshey, who was lovely. Again, that was another fantastic. He's just such a nice man. And he's so happy. I mean, this Hugh is in the UK. People probably don't know, or outside the UK, might not be aware. Even a lot of people in the UK might not be aware. A couple of years ago, he was named, I think, the BBC's highest paid actor for being in Holby City, which is a medical drama. So he's also very well respected for Shakespeare and amazing productions. But this little film that he made 35 years ago, he's so happy to talk about, and so enthusiastic, and so just another really nice thing to be able to. You should try and get Hugh on. He'd be.
Yeah, no, I'd love that. That'd be amazing.
I keep missing Hugh at every convention he's been to. I keep missing. Either he's not turned up, or I've not been able to go, and I'm dying to meet Hugh.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, no, he'd be awesome. Good stuff. Oh, look, thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming on. Really appreciate it. It's been a fantastic time listening to the stories. And A Kind of Magic, The Making of Highlander, is out on the 17th of September.
That's right, yeah.
Get that right, yeah. You can order it directly from Polaris if you want a nice signed copy. And we should mention the first 1,536 copies of the book come with. Do you want to have it?
Yeah, they come with a little booklet.
Yeah, look at that.
A limited edition booklet, which is a slightly different version of the cover. But yeah, some photos we couldn't fit in.
Yeah.
Into the book, including this lovely one of a certain man on his horse.
Yes, yeah.
And another one here. I think you can just about see of Russell and Christopher, and that's Beatty in that little anorak. And just some photos. Another 20. I think it's 20 or so photos.
Yeah.
Of the Kurgan in the mist.
See that storyboard.
Extra stuff.
Yeah,
extra stuff. Yeah, and this is it. As a fan of things and of box sets, it's nice. I just thought, let's just try and do a little. So the publisher very kindly said, let's do that, and we'll give it away for free. So yeah, if you buy it on the website, you'll get that bundled for the first, again, 1,536. So hopefully it'll be there a little while. But
1,536, was that intentional?
Maybe.
But yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And
yeah, no, I can't wait to do that as well, because just that little snippet I saw then of the storyboard, that's the kind of thing that gets me going. The little story of him with all that stuff I'd love to see. I can't wait to see that. That's amazing. Cool. All right, well, look, with that, could you do us the honor? We always make our guests at gunpoint and talk us at the end.
Thank you.
Sword point, yes, at the end of a sword. Sorry, Rob. Yes, you're absolutely right. So yeah, if you could see us out, that would be amazing. Thanks, John.
Hi, this is Jonathan Melville on Highlander Heart, reminding you to hold fast and don't lose your head.
Yeah, but it should have changed it slightly. Didn't he lose your heat? I mean,
no, yeah, you know, you know.
And if you want, I'm gonna go.
and for our international viewers, this is what he said.
Hi, this is Jonathan Melville on Highlander Heart, reminding you to hold fast and don't lose your heat.
Yes.
That just gave me chills.
Oh, excellent.
There you go.